What's up, and welcome to Under the Hood with Jonathan Hood, right here, wherever you get your podcast, and right here on YouTube. I am Jay Hood, and we have a special guest here on Under the Hood. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, iconic journalist, also cultural icon, and on top of that, probably the worst lawn in the neighborhood, Scoop Jackson. He's with us here on Under the Hood. As always, Scoop, appreciate your time.
Man, I thought you were off my lawn, man. Cause I mean, since we moved like 17 years ago, I've kind of like gotten the lawn thing together at the new crib. Cause the bougie black folks I stay around, they don't stand for that like fake lawn. That no take care of your lawn thing. They have rules.
I did drive by. I'm just telling you, Scoop. I mean, I don't know if you're going to write a column in the Sun Times about it, but after all those fireworks, man, you really should be picking that stuff up. It damages the lawn. I'm just trying to help you. That's all
All
I
right,
am. Just trying to help you, man.
hey, you can take the brother out of Roseland, but you know how it goes.
I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying, man. So I'm glad you're with me. The reason why that I called, the reason why I reached out to you is because I need your help, as always.
No problem. Anytime. I'll see
Okay.
what I can do.
Okay, so I need your help about where we are right now in the NBA. 2025, where we are in the league. Like, when I say NBA right now, what comes to mind for you?
Wow, that's a great question. And I'm not dodging the question. I'm just wondering if I'm the right person to ask because I'm so basketball favorable. And I'm old enough to have seen the ebbs and flows and the changes that the game, especially at the professional level, goes through. That I try not to be hypercritical or try not to get caught up in whatever narratives being painted about the league because I know that as anything else, it will go through the situation and then it will change. Just like most other professional sports, we can say the same thing about MLB, NFL, FIBA, whatever, UTA, the PGA. There ebbs and flows through professional sports over decades. Um, so when I think of NBA, I still think of basketball. I think of it as a professional league that's still flawed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, I'm so pro basketball. Like I'm almost a basketball apologist. I understand the NBA is a professional league, and you're asking about the NBA, but I'm old enough to have known that, like I said, I watched the league decade to decade to go through all the ebbs and flows. So I try not to lump onto whatever the narrative is or what seems to be the narrative about issues that people, and when I say people, I mean the media in general, public happen to have with the league. Um, I'm not gonna see like from a professional standpoint that the league is in a great place. It's not at the place that it was that we lived through in Chicago when Jordan was taking care of the entire NBA. But it's not in the worst place because hell, I'm old enough to be a fan of the NBA before Dr. J and the ABA came in and knew how bad that was.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were going through from a public image standpoint. I mean, the play was still there, but from a cultural perspective, we were watch few players in the NBA because we were feeling what was going on in the other league. And this is when the NBA had competition. When the NBA had to go to another league to basically save them.
Mm-hmm.
So I could go through a list of problems that I have with the NBA, but I could go through a list of everything that I love still about the game because at the end of the day, it's kind of like education. People can do all they want to about education, understand education in the business, but at the end of the day, especially when you're dealing with primary education, are you doing what's in the best interest of the kids? Damn the school boycotts, damn the budget, damn all this other stuff that goes on in the business of public schooling. Are you doing what's in the best interest of the kid? Because that's what's most important. Same way with me at basketball.
Yeah.
Are
So here's
my critiques in the best interest of the game of basketball? Are my feelings about the NBA in the best interest of basketball? And I think that as a league, the NBA has three issues that are paramount.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know if basketball at this point has been able to erase them. One, and I've said it before, I wrote a column about it last May, that I caught a lot of heat from the referees because I kind of called them out. But I do think that the inconsistencies in their refereeing is one of the problems. But I think that's the lowest of their problems right now. I think the style of play during the regular season, the abundance of 3-point shooting, and that whole pace and space thing has run its course because it's gone to a place where it's overflow now. It's becoming. There's nothing wrong with that being a part of the game, but it shouldn't be paramount. Like 3-point shooting should not be 75% of the game, the same way dunking was not 75% of the game.
Right.
But it's getting to the point of that. And then the injuries. And the injuries, I think, are playing a role, partially because of the style of play. And I think the NBA needs to address that. I think the injuries, especially over time, has nothing to do with minutes played, has nothing to do with shoes or conditioning or whatever. I think the style of play, and because of the pace and space and all the running and that they're doing, and the fact that I think, Jonathan, tell me if I'm wrong, we're probably on our third or fourth generation of players who have come up only playing one sport. So their bodies only know to do one thing. And that's taking a toll on, upper and specifically, lower extremities. And that's why we're having so many soft tissue issues, because you're having players now that are in their third, fourth, fifth year in the NBA, and they've been doing nothing but playing basketball since they were 8 years old. They haven't introduced themselves to tennis. They haven't introduced themselves to baseball. They haven't really introduced themselves to football for a longer period of time. Mm-hmm. They're getting into golf now, but golf is not athletically going to save you.
Right.
The way playing other sports do. So I think, when you say NBA, I'm thinking of how the game has evolved and what it's evolving into, and you're seeing a fair amount of players play different styles, which is great. But at the same time, I'm looking at the three issues that I think the NBA as a league has to deal with, and they still have not found a way to tackle those issues. And it's hard to think of the NBA and all the good things that it is and all the good things that it represents without looking at those three issues I just pointed out and looking at the role that they're playing. That I'm not saying it would make the game better, and I'm not looking for utopia, but to me, it's a fact that the NBA hasn't addressed them. That's still a problem for me.
Well, see, this is why you are the right person to ask about the league, because what I'm getting to, and I'll talk about what I talked about on ESPN 1000 the other day, and that was talking about the gatekeepers, right? The gatekeepers of the game. When you turn on the National Football League or you turn on Major League Baseball, what are they talking about? They're talking about the players of today. They might harken back to the days of, of certain eras, but they're not bashing it. And so what I'm saying is some of that barbershop conversation that we've had that used to be private is now on podcasts and it's on radio shows. And unfortunately, those that are in high places in the NBA, you have guys that used to be on TNT, now it's going to be on ESPN and other places, Scoop, that are talking about, hey, this game is terrible, or these players are not like they used to be. And I just think that where baseball and football thrive, the NBA is behind. They don't have people like you to be able to talk about how great the game is and how the game has progressed. I think that's a problem.
No, I think it's a problem, but I also think it's also learned behavior. I think, especially with so many sports figures entering into the media space, that they are conditioned by those gatekeepers, by the gatekeepers above them, to become critical, because you don't want to come off as inauthentic. When we bring you into this media space, we want you to treat it as if you're in a barbershop, as if you're in the bar, as if you're at the barbecue. We want your personality to shine. So say the things on camera that you would say if you're hanging out with your guys. If you're with other players, give us that insight. Move that curtain back so we can see what that's like. Be an insider. You know what I'm saying? And I've been in rooms where that has happened. And I'll say this, and maybe I'm wrong, but I will say this. I don't think those same conversations go across the board with all professional sports.
That's correct.
I don't think the analysts and the insiders of baseball get that same conversation constantly. I definitely know it's not true in football. They definitely do not The NFL does not preach that and make that a narrative or an assignment for their front-facing gatekeepers to make a part of the storyline for representing their league. You know, there's a fine line between authenticity. There's fine lines. I'll plural that. There's fine lines between authenticity, truth, and betrayal. And I think the NBA, out of all the leagues we speak of, is the one that walks all three of those lines. You know, but I do not think it's by mistake. I do not think it's by happenstance. I think we are, and I'm not just saying the athletes who are coming into the media space. Jonathan, you and I have been in this media space for a long time, and we know the conversations. And we can honestly say that basketball is treated differently when it comes to public conversation.
Yes, basketball is loud. Basketball does compare eras. We cross-check eras all the time. We always make those comparisons. But at the same time, in 2025, what I want to see is if I need to hear debates, it's got to be over here. But on my main broadcast, one thing that you don't hear Tom Brady say is that Lamar Jackson is not great or he'll never win the championship. They never have debates about that. They're encouraging Lamar Jackson. They're hoping that he can be on the same level as Patrick Mahomes. Like, same thing with Major League Baseball. I get a Harold Reynolds or I get a Jimmy Rollins, and those guys, they are looking at the Pete Crow Armstrongs. They're looking at, like, the next generation of baseball and saying, we like those guys because – but basketball, we got to go back to Kobe. We got to go back to Michael. We got to drag it down. And to me, that does a disservice for the Ants and the SGAs and all these other the Jokic's, all these guys that are trying to do what they can with the game today when all the main characters, all the guys that's on podcasts, all the guys that's on TV telling you what you're watching, that's bullshit. It's not like it was back in the day. And to me, at some point, we have to evolve as basketball analysts.
We do. But I agree with you. And I agree that we do have to evolve. But at the same time, no disrespect, man, Mike fucked it up for everybody.
Yeah, I understand.
So, you know, that's the one thing that we have to own as basketball guys.
Yes.
That we're dealing with a basketball guy that did something that nobody in no other sport has done. And I'm not taking anything away from Gretzky. But you don't see the same conversation going on in the NHL about everybody comparing to not just a debate against Gretzky. You know, I don't care if it's Alex Ovechkin. I don't care if it's you know, whoever. You know, Connor Bedard here. You know, whoever. You know, it doesn't make a difference who that next player is. You don't see those direct comparisons from a debate standpoint in hockey. You don't see it in football. You know, you just don't see it because, unfortunately, as great as Tom Brady was, as great as Joe Montana was, as great as Jim Brown was, you know, as great as hell Walter Payton was here, as great as Jerry Rice was, none of them guys, and as great as Jack Nicholson was, even with Tiger Woods, you get what I'm saying? None of them fascinated society the way Michael Jordan did. Michael happened to play basketball and did something no other athlete did. He moved, as Rakim would say, he moved the crowd.
Yeah.
He moved the crowd in a way that nobody in any other sport has. Maybe Ali is close, even though people vacillate back and forth whether he's the greatest or original GOAT or whatever. But it's still unlike anything we've seen with Jordan. So part of the basketball conversation is because Mike set a standard that fucked it up that everybody uses against everything. And not only did he do it individually, Hood, he did it from a team standpoint. So not only did he set a pinnacle, his team set a pinnacle. So that's where a lot of times this basketball conversation starts, that we have to keep in our mindset of why the debate culture exists in basketball unlike any other sport. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It very rarely gets to the point where we've seen anything like or been affected by anything like what Michael Jordan has done. So a lot of this blame comes on Michael Jordan. But with that blame comes the understanding that he made it an easy target to start these conversations. He made it very easy. But, he's the easy go-to. And when you're in a media space that we are in where, and we'll be honest here, 80% of the people in this space are lazy as fuck. You know that.
Yes, I do.
So now you have low-hanging fruit to go to cover what you can't cover. So, what am I gonna talk about? What's gonna be my angle? What agenda should I say? What should be a narrative? Oh, Michael Jordan. He's such an easy go-to on all fronts. And because he's basketball related, and you don't have to worry about the minutia of crossing sports to make a point, he becomes the basketball landscape for everything. The alpha, omega, and the zeta. You know what I'm saying? So we go to that, and that's part of the reason that you have debates in this basketball space that you don't have any of the other sports, because Michael Jordan has just made it easier for the media to do what they are told becomes their job. And that is to make this sport a debatable sport, even when there shouldn't be one, and it doesn't help the game out with the narrative it creates.
So then we get to LeBron James, and we know that he's in the autumn of his career. I just think that for LeBron James, he's been great for the game. He's played terrific basketball, one of the all-time greats, there's no question. I just like to know what happens when he does hang it up, because, you know, I know that he can be polarizing because he's part of this AAU mentality over the years. Utilizing your free agency, one thing, but the other thing is like, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to go to the Lakers, I'm going to go to Cleveland, I'm going to go to these different places. I just like to know, like, what happens when he's gone. Like, he won't be beat up anymore once he's retired.
Well, that depends on what he does. You know, and I think LeBron has put himself in strategically smart situations where he'll be more powerful than he'll be vocal. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's going to be interesting to see how the world receives that. You know, speaking of Michael Jordan, that's another precedence that he set for all sports athletes. And here's what's going to be a problem. You won't hear that debate too often, because that's a different type of debate that America and society wants to have when it comes to somebody's greatness. And for Michael Jordan to be the singular athlete that's been able to do what he's been able to do in a post-career, especially when it comes to business, you won't hear. I don't care how successful LeBron will be. You don't want that debate, because then that becomes a two-person debate, and that two-person debate is different from a business side of things than it is from an athletic side of things. Mm-hmm. Because what we do on the field and what we do on the court, we're expected to do those things. We're made to do those things. But to become billionaires, you know, and hold down business and have cultural and corporate currency, we're not supposed to do that. So, you know, as LeBron becomes more powerful, then he becomes vocal in his post-career, which it looks like is going to happen. You know, the first person and the only person we should debate or compare to would be Michael Jordan. Yeah. But because of the context of what that actually means, by having two black men rise above what they laid the groundwork from an athletic standpoint and transfer that into a corporate standpoint, where they are owning C-suites, that's not going to be a debate. You know, that's when you're going to see that one drop rule come into play. You know, there's only room for one of y'all at a time. This is not a debatable. And here's the thing. We're going to watch that happen. And this is the importance of brothers like you and I. Yeah. That's where you and I have to start that debate. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's our responsibility. Yeah. So no. Why are you all stopping the LeBron Michael Jordan debate now? Let's debate who's the greatest businessman. You know, let's debate who's the greatest owner. Let's debate who's the greatest, who's had from a business standpoint, a corporate standpoint, the greatest post-athletic career, white or black. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. White or black. Let's have that conversation.
Yeah, I love how Mike. Yeah, I love how Michael was just like, hey, Republicans buy shoes too. He got it from both sides. People just enjoyed him. He played it down the middle, which is smart. And LeBron has put his, you know, a line in the sand on some social debates. There's no question. But at the same time, though, I mean, both of them have been lucrative. I like to see what those numbers look like on both sides. But I think they both have done a great job financially while they're playing, and after they're playing, it's just been amazing. Michael's receipts as long as a CVS receipt, that's for sure.
It is. And here's the thing, Jonathan, one thing you have to say I want to make sure is important. Both of them have done a hell of a job of making sure it's not just them making these things happen. the opportunities they provided for minorities, the opportunities they provided for women, the opportunities they specifically have given to Black people has been amazing. So it's gone beyond, while Michael and we still have not gotten truth of that comment of Republicans buy shoes too. It was, I thought it was kind of a funny thing, but we'll have another conversation.
Yes,
it was meant to, it was kind of tongue in cheek, but it's funny, and I don't want to get long with it, but it's funny how more people make comments about that and don't and make comments about how it didn't decide back then to not support support Harvey Grant in his hometown, but nobody says anything about him not giving any support to Harold Washington, who was running for mayor of Chicago.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So Michael playing that middle ground. It's funny how you all pick a narrative and decide to ride with it, because if you really wanted to get on Michael, that's the one you get on him about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Harold Washington needed your support in Chicago. That's what we needed you at. But nobody brings that up. But what I'm saying is that, beyond those statements and beyond that, to me, what Michael has done for minorities through Jordan Brand, through owning the Charlotte, through all of his endeavors, through what he's done with NASCAR, dude, no Black company in America has a higher percentage of Blacks and minorities as Michael Jordan has over the course of his 30-year, whatever, post-career.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not get lost in a comment when he's backing it up with a different type of equity. Equity that has been the blueprint for what LeBron has been able to do with all of his off the court offerings. And you're looking at the people that he's put in a position of power, and you're looking at the minorities and the women, that he's been able to give opportunities to when so many doors have been slammed in their faces. So that's an important thing. It's beyond just them being the minorities. It's the opportunities they created and provided through their businesses for minorities who are overqualified to do the things and have the opportunities that they don't have. And they've done this consistently over the course of both of their business careers. And I thought Magic Johnson did it too, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Magic is, he's just been great all over the world and just helping out in that endeavor. I do want to talk to you about your coverage of David Stern and the NBA in that era that he presided over, and Adam Silver right now as a commissioner. I just think that as good as the league is, as far as they're getting their streaming deal and their TV deal together, which is great to see it back on NBC, there's nothing wrong with that. I ignore ratings because, Scoop, over the years, you come to find out when you do this for a long time, ratings are bullshit. And it ain't real. It's never been real to me. It's arbitrary numbers. They only cherry pick certain people to determine whether or not they have a certain rating or not. So I radio or TV, I never really believed in the numbers. So when I look at the commissioner right now, I just wonder how you view him versus how you view David Stern, because as we recall, Stern ruled an iron fist. He was able to ride on the coattails of great 80s and 90s basketball. But what about Silver? Some things that you look at him and wonder, what is he going through right now? Because it's not the same in a lot of ways.
Yeah, here's the thing. I know both of them. I knew one and know the other. I can say I know Adam. I know them both. I had a great relationship to a certain point with both of them. David Stern was different, and he was right person for the time that the NBA needed it. He was a different businessman than Adam, but you have to understand, Adam had the luxury of working with and behind David Stern for years, and he had a grasp on what the league needed post David Stern, and seeing where David could have done things differently and make sure that if he ever got in that position, he would make those changes. And to be honest with you, knowing both of them the way that I do, the way they approach running the league is directly aligned with their personalities. You know what I'm saying? Their personalities really are connected to how they ran the NBA. And I think at the time, going through what the NBA was going through, David being who he was at the time, the NBA needed that. Now, And the NBA grew to a situation that benefited what David brought to the table. Now, David got lucky, in that, once again, Michael Jordan fell into his hands, and he also got lucky that the Chicago Bulls became what they became during his era.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I can honestly tell you is that I never really understood the power that Michael Jordan had until I started working with the NBA in 1999. And no disrespect, but when I went into their offices in Secaucus, New Jersey,
mm-hmm.
after Michael's, retirement, I realized there were 650 people in the NBA working for the NBA that had no idea what the hell to do, because they had been there so long and Michael had taken care of them. The machine was running itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they were like,
Yeah.
oh, now for the first time in 15 years, we got to work. What do I have to do? Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, specifically Michael, he took care of everything on the business side of running that league. He made everybody's job easy because it took care of itself while he was there. Adam did not have that luxury. He inherited greatness in the LeBron James, in the Dwayne Wades, in the Kobe Bryants, in the Steph Currys, in the Kevin Durants. He had a plethora of things of greatness that is amazing for you to inherit. But the league had grown to a point that it wasn't taking care of itself. So Adam had to do work. Not that David Stern didn't have to do, but Adam had to do work and all his people had to do work, unlike a large part of what David Stern had to go through. So Adam's personality is always going to be that of a measured individual. Adam will never let you know that anything shakes him. Adam will never let you know if anything bothers him. Adam will never let you know if things make him that happy. Adam is very, very cerebral in what he does. And he's one of the more brilliant people that I've seen across the board because of what he's seen. And one of the more brilliant people that I've talked to because of what he's seen. Sitting behind David Stern and having a different personality from him, but still holding on to that for 20 years, that's brilliance. You know what I'm saying? That's a hard thing to do when somebody's supposed to be your successor, but they're a totally different person than you are. To hold that down is brilliance, but that's him paying attention to everything and him not losing himself in the process. So while I see how Adam Silver runs this thing differently than David Stern does, I'm looking at his brilliance and understanding what the game needs right now. Now, I'm not saying Adam Silver is 100% perfect in what he does, just as David Stern was not 100% perfect in what he does, what he did.
Right.
Adam's not as polarized as David Stern, but Adam's not going to take the risks that David Stern did. They're two totally different individuals. I hate to say this, they're very much like Michael Jordan and LeBron in personality and approach, in everything. But they fit where we are in this era of basketball. And I think while David Stern, and this is the most, visible difference to me, while David Stern always put the owners at the forefront, Adam Silver has put the players at the forefront. Now, to some people that might not work, but for the NBA to survive the way it is right now and the way it's expanded with this global situation and how different it is than baseball, how different it is than hockey, how different it is than football, how different it is than most other sports because it's an individual-driven sport. That's the one thing that David Stern, that's part of the brilliance of David Stern, is that he let players drive the leagues. And if your team was good enough, your team was a part of the conversation. But it was Magic and the Lakers. It was Larry and the Celtics. It was Michael and the Bulls. It was Akeem and the Rockets. It was Charles and the Sixers or the Suns.
Yeah.
The individual player drove. Adam Silver's like, we're going to, yes, the individual player has a lot to do with this because we're such a small league when it comes to stardom. And you're only looking at 5 players at a time. So we have the ability to treat team sport differently and find that gap between the way football is looked at as a team sport, baseball is looked at as a team sport, soccer is looked at as a team sport, and we bring elements of boxing, tennis, and golf into that where they are the individual sport themselves. Adam Silver, we're going to find a middle ground. So thank goodness we're going to make the Spurs the team. We're not going to highlight Tim Duncan that way anymore. It's going to be about the Spurs. Oh, yeah. Now Golden State. Steph Curry is that guy. He's the generational talent we haven't seen. But we're still going to not put him out on front like that. This is going to be about the Golden State Warriors. That's going to be our approach to this game. Whatever team LeBron is on, yes, LeBron is the guy, but it's going to be about the Heatles. You know what I'm saying? He's going to the Lakers. It's going to be about the Lakers. So Adam has done a different job because this era demands that. You get what I'm saying? It demands that. Yeah, so I think this brings now, as somebody who, like I said, I know Adam Silver. Yeah. And I've tried. I haven't been that guy that is, you know, whenever I find something wrong or what I feel he should be doing in his job, like I'm not in a position to do that because you got there for a reason. You know, I'm not calling him or emailing him like, hey, man, you need to, you know, here's my. He hasn't asked me for my 1.5 cents of anything. So I'm not going to give him my 1.5 cents because, hey, dude, you do this. You earned this. I didn't. I'm in no position now. If we happen to run into each other, Scoop, what do you think? The same way you're asking me, I will tell him, hey, man, I don't know what you need to do about the refereeing situation, but I think something needs to be done. You know, I don't know what you're doing about this injury thing, but something I think needs to be done. Now, I don't know, and I think, not that he doesn't know that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I think he needs to know from outside of the NBA bubble, you know, how that's actually affecting the brand, how that's affecting the league. And, you know,
tell you this.
Look, I answer your question with this. If David Stern was still alive and David Stern was still running the league, how do you think David Stern would handle the All-Star game situation differently than Adam Silver's doing right now?
Oh, it's a good question. I just know that it's a lot of stuff that Stern would not be run over by, and he would not be having to kowtow to what networks wanted. I know that's for sure. He definitely makes sure that the basketball was the basketball. I know that behind the scenes that he was a terror. I know that his front facing, you know, he's very kind and always had a smile. But I know that he was cutthroat behind the scenes. That is for sure. I cannot wait, by the way, for the Stern Silver Jordan LeBron comment that you made there to be aggregated. That's gonna be fun. I can't wait for that shit.
I did not say it for aggregation. I'm not Skip Bayless. I do not do those things.
I can't wait for that. That's gonna be great.
I said it because I thought it was apropos when you're looking at their personalities and how their personalities are part of their game.
I'm just saying it's gonna be great on the headline, boy. It's gonna be, you know, some teenager in his basement in a blog is gonna be writing that. That's gonna be awesome. I'm just telling you, that's how it works today. That's the new journalism. You know that,
right. Well, if it comes, I'm here for it. If anybody gives me 5 minutes to explain it, fine. If I don't, then I'll look. I've been taking hits in this game for 35 years, man. I'm good. But Hood, to be honest, I think. You know, I don't know if Adam, and you use the phrase, gets run over. I don't think Adam runs over the situation as much as he tries to massage the situation.
That's where Stern would not do.
Right, exactly.
It was his way. That's what I mean.
Exactly. And think about it. I don't know, with the way the collective bargaining agreement has evolved. That's the best word. How the collective bargaining agreement with the NBA has evolved over the years.
Yeah.
And with the players shifting and with their players union demanding that they supersede the powers from a percentage standpoint that the owners are massaging that situation and understanding the relevance and how to handle this. Because once again, he kind of acquiesces to the player side because of the way things are set up, you know. And this is where I appreciate it. As someone who saw what the NBA used to be, and how professional sports in general, but we'll stay on topic with the NBA, of the freedoms and the liberties that the players didn't have,
Mm-hmm.
And how you had, the word modern day slavery being thrown around back in the day when it looked at professional athletics, especially with the NBA.
Yeah.
The fact that doesn't exist anymore and that phrase does not apply anymore because of the shift in power that the players have, I appreciate someone like Adam Silver, like understanding that has meaning and understanding from a historical standpoint that this player power structure is long overdue.
Tell us about the.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
so
David
tell
Stern
us.
wouldn't get run over, but and I don't know if David Stern would understand it because once again, he catered towards the owners.
Yes.
And I would rather have this with Adam Silver doing it than not have it at all and have it revert back to what it was even before David Stern got in, when Walter Kennedy was running.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, we're living in a country that will roll back everything now. They don't mind because it's all about making America what it once was before.
Yes.
So don't think that the rollback and modern day slavery in sports can't come back or they won't try to make it happen.
Yes, the White House has the odometer and they're rolling it back like a used car.
Oh, dude, it's way beyond the White House now right now.
Yes, I understand.
78 million people don't live inside the White House, so it's way beyond that.
No, I understand.
I want some of those young folks to aggregate that.
I know you have a book that's coming out. Are you working on, what's your next project that we can look forward to?
I'll give you two because the next one we haven't had a date for, but I did a coffee table book for the Whitaker Group, who is owned by James Whitner, who's the owner of A Mom and Yeah, which is one of the it's probably the top upscale black boutique stores that we have in the country. James has been around for about 20 years, and he has the longest running black business partnership with Jordan Brand of any black business in the retail game. And he's very much like an upscale Supreme, for those who are not aware of what he did, what he's about. And they commissioned me to do a coffee table book for their 20th year in business and the 10th anniversary with the Jordan Brand. So I just got through finishing that. I finished that last year. It should be out hopefully by the end of 2025. But it's the next project that is, to me, I don't want to minimize what James is all about, but it's the big one, and it's worth having just some type of mention. I'm currently working on the memoir for Grandmaster Flash. Yeah. Right. So that's and it's a very unique project, because of who Flash is and what he represents. But it's called Birth of a Culture, and it's basically his story, but also telling the entire birth of hip hop culture through his voice, but other people's lenses. Like, we're interviewing everybody from Fab Five Freddy to Africa Bambaataa to Chuck D to Niles Rodgers to all the graffiti artists, all the original breakdancers, Lady Pink and Shy Rock from the Funky 4+1 to DJ Premier to Pete Rock, to everybody that helped build hip hop from 1970. I'm not even gonna say 1973. I'm gonna go to where graffiti was big, because it started way before the break beats and the microphone. Now we're going back and including everybody in this story, but it's gonna be told through Flash's voice.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a huge project, and it's one where there have been people who have written the history of hip hop and written the history of the culture, but they haven't tied it all in together. They haven't tied all of the 5 elements of graffiti, breakdance, MCing, DJ, and knowledge and put them all together with the people that were there to implement all of these elements into becoming this one culture. And Flash is the guy to do it. And he, for reasons unknown to me, tabbed me to help him curate this project. So
I think that's awesome, man. So I gotta go to the dry cleaners. I gotta get my suits ready because there'll be parties along with this, right? So I'm already invited. I'm in.
Yo, this is the origin of hip hop, baby. This ain't no suits involved. You got to bring the Kango back, son.
Gotta go all the way to the attic and get my Kango. Okay, I guess I will.
Sir, you gotta
I'll
go
make that climb.
You got the Kango back. But no, it's a big deal in stature, you know. So I'm very honored to, awesome. And still humbled to be a part of this. So I try not to talk about it because you don't want to talk things into existence and then they become bad luck.
Yeah.
But you asked about one, and I that's the one I'm working on right now. So
no, you got to talk about it, man. Grandmaster. I mean, that is just awesome, man. I cannot wait.
And dude, I would tell you this, Jonathan. I thought I knew, like I thought I knew hip hop. I'm a hip hop baby. Outside of being a house baby here in Chicago.
Oh no! You're a music snob. That's what you are.
Technically, thank you for the plug. I appreciate that.
That's who you are. What you mean?
Right.
Right.
But man, my thesis. I was one of the first people in the country to ever write an academic thesis on hip hop. So I thought I knew hip hop, like from a cultural and academic standpoint, and from a research standpoint. I thought I knew. Hood, I ain't no shit. Man, the stories and the people. From being at that ground level, from being in the Bronx at that time, like and going back and meeting the people who were there and their stories and their history and their legacies, stories that have never been told. Like I knew nothing. Like I knew nothing, man. This thing, the only thing, and it's gonna sound sacrilegious by doing this, and maybe because I was spent last year like really going through this process with him, but Jonathan Igue in his book on King, the one that Pulitzer Prize, him spending 6 years on doing King and going through the King's life and getting all the information from those who were there building SNCC on the civil rights movement, building Ebenezer, going through King's years before he even decided to come on and be, before he was reverend. Just all of those stories, and we think we know until you get in it. You really don't know. I'm looking at this as the cultural equivalent to that, and not saying that Grandmaster Flash is king, but in the culture of hip hop, he's the center of all this stuff, and all the people around him are kind of like not necessarily descendants, but they live that ride with him, and for him to have a relationship and the reverence that these people still have for him for what he created and what he started. That is the foundation of this culture is very similar because I'm getting everything in a way that's never been told before of this collective. My wife asked me, she said, this sounds like a documentary. I said, Tracy, this story is actually the hip hop version of Eyes on the Prize. That's exactly what it is.
Wow. Well, that's going to be just outstanding. That's great. I just want to reach out to you because I had a lot of questions, a lot of stuff in my mind about the game of basketball, the game that we love. But that's why I want to reach out to you and find out what your new projects are. So I'm glad you spent some time with us as always.
I hope I made some sense.
Yes.
I hope I made some sense and gave not that we can always find answers, but at least give some certain things to think about before we come to a conclusion on how we, assess what's going on in the game of basketball at the professional level.
Well, look, I gave you 5 columns. Start writing it. Let's go. I sent you 2,000 words apiece on topics that I've been thinking about the basketball. So you're welcome, as always. You're welcome.
Well, from the movie Malcolm X, get your hands out of my pocket.
If the lead isn't Jonathan Hood now we're talking about, then you and I got a problem. That's right. So, hey, I'm glad you spent some time, man. Thank you so much, and we'll hope to talk to you soon.
No, we got it. We'll get us soon. The next couple of weeks is on me. We're gonna meet at our favorite spot and talk about Steve Bardo, talk about David Kaplan, talk about Leon Rogers. You know,
Yeah.
we're
Okay.
gonna have our
Good.
private conversations about our people.
I won't need this then. This is good. I won't need this. I'll
Yeah,
put this
yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah.
I'll put this in a drawer.
Yeah, man. What my man say? Dude, you got so much money, you already check the bank bounce. We know how you live in hood.
All right, man. Thank you so much as always.
Always, man. Appreciate the phone call. Appreciate the conversation, partner.